Geography paper 2 comprises of two sections. The first section, section A, is a theory section, which has got two questions in theory. The first question is rural and urban settlements, which is 6 marks. Then we have question number 2, economic geography of South Africa, 6 marks. And section B is geographical skills and techniques, which is our map work for 30 marks. Right, so without taking much time, we need to go through our questions and we'll try to do some illustrations where there is need to illustrate and try to explain where we need to explain why we are advocating for the given set of answers to the given questions. Right, so our first question on rural and urban settlements is the sketch below shows various rural settlements. Match the descriptions in question 1.11 to 1.18 with letters A to F. Right, so we are going to look at these settlements here and try to match them with the given set of questions which correspond to the given settlement situation. Right, from A, B, C, D, E, up to F. Right, so we're going to start with our first question. Our first question is saying a settlement that is isolated. An isolated settlement, right, if we check here, we see that our buildings, when we have a situation of isolation, our settlement or the buildings must be further away from others. They must be far away from others. So if we try to analyze using our symbol of the building on those given set of settlements, we find that settlement number B is the one that is in isolation. Settlement number B, you can see that there is only one building here. As you can see, there's only one building, and this whole area is cultivated land. There is no other building around to suggest that there are some other settlements around. So it implies that this settlement is in isolation, is one on its own. So the correct response is settlement number, item B. Right, we move on to the next question. A settlement that has its shape influenced by a star shape. A star shape is a stellar settlement. So if we try to look at these settlements, we tend to find that this is a star. Like you can see how these rods are intersecting with one another. They give us a shape of a star. Like you can see this intersection here. And the buildings are located in such a way they are influenced by the star shape of that particular settlement. So the correct response for that one there, it is C. Then we go to the next point, the next question, question number 1.13. It says, a settlement that is a wet point. A wet point settlement, basically, I will try to quickly explain. A wet point settlement is a settlement that is established for the need to access water. Like we are saying, we are in an arid condition. We are staying in arid regions, like for example, in the desert, where water is a scarce resource. We establish settlements at a point where we can easily access water because water is a scarce resource. That is a wet point settlement. Then we have a dry point settlement. A dry point settlement, in that particular area, there is a risk of flooding. For the risk of flooding, then it means we must establish a settlement above the flood line. We must try to identify a high-lying area which won't be affected by flood because there is risk of flooding in the given area. That is a dry point settlement. So we want to look for a settlement that has been established because of the need to access water, a wet point settlement. That is number 113. Right, if we check settlement number E, there is a dam here and the buildings are surrounding the dam. So it means automatically these buildings are situated around the dam for the need to access water from the dam. So number E, item E qualifies to be the correct response for question 113. Then 114, a settlement that has a linear shape. Linear in the sense that we are looking at a settlement that has got a shape of a line. that is linear. Right. So which settlement resembles a linear or a line? Right. If we check on A, we are seeing that there is this major route in between, and the settlements are in linear form along that route. So it's A for number 4. Then number 5, a dry point settlement. We've explained what a dry point settlement is. If we check here, this is a swampy area. We can see this is a marsh or a vley, and this settlement is on a high-lying area. So it means this settlement was established here because this area is prone to flooding. This area is a swampy area, it's a vley, and there is risk of flooding in this area. That is why the settlement was established on this high-lying area. So it's D for number 5, 115. Our correct response is D. Moving on to the next question. Settlement built in the gap or pass. A gap or a pass, that is a passage in between a high-lying area, for example, a mountain pass. Right. Which settlement is that one? That is number 116. If we check here at F, this is a high-lying area, and this is a high-lying area, and automatically this qualifies to be a gap or a pass. So settlement F is the one which has been established in a pass or a gap. So it's correct. Response F for number 6. Number 7, a settlement pattern which results in less social conduct. Less social conduct. If we are talking of social conduct, we are saying people are interacting with one another. But where there's less social conduct, it implies that the settlement is in isolation, is dispersed away from other settlements. So B qualifies to be the correct response. It's an isolated settlement. There's less social conduct. People cannot socialize because of distance. Then a choice of site of this settlement is influenced by soil fertility. If we check, that settlement is established for the sake of accessing fertile soils. Automatically, B qualifies to be the correct response. Why are we saying so? This whole area is for cultivation. This whole area again is for cultivation, implying that the major activity that is happening in that settlement is farming, and you cannot farm where the soil is not fertile. So B qualifies again to be the correct response. That takes us to the end of question number 1.1. Moving on to question number 1.2. Right, question number 1.2, it says, choose the correct words from those given in brackets. Write only the word or words next to the question numbers 121 to 127. Right, if you are checking number 121, it is saying urban expansion or urbanization refers to the increase in the percentage of people living in urban areas. Our correct response is urbanization. The increase in the percentage of people living in urban areas is urbanization. Urban expansion, this is the physical growth of the urban area. When the urban area is physically growing, is expanding, we have more buildings being introduced to the urban area. The space coverage of the urban area is expanding. That is urban expansion. So correct response is urbanization. Right, we move on to the next question. Central city or central place is an urban area providing goods and services to the surrounding rural population. We don't have a central city concept, we have a central place. A central place, we are saying a central place is basically an urban area that supplies the services and the goods to the surrounding farmlands or countryside. If we check towns like Uppington in South Africa, is typical example of a central place. It supplies basic goods and services to the surrounding farmlands around the area. That is a central place. Right, we have high order or low order services are required on a daily basis. What we require on a daily basis are low order services. High order services are those services that we do not need on a daily basis. We need them maybe once after some time. Low order services or low order goods, we are looking at those services of basic requirement. Like for example, goods like food stuffs, the groceries. We need them almost on a daily basis. We need food on a daily basis. Those are low order. And also relating them to the range of goods, they have got a shorter range. People are willing to travel for shorter distances to acquire convenient goods, the goods that they need on a daily basis. But higher order goods or services, for example, uh, services like university, it's a high order service. We don't really need universities on a daily basis, but low order services like primary schools. Right. So we move on to the next question. Maximum distance a consumer is willing to travel to purchase goods is that is the range of goods, like what I've been mentioning. Low order goods have got a shorter range. People are prepared to travel shorter distances to go and acquire low order services, but um, high order goods and services have got a wider range. Right, we'll move on to the next question. Overcrowding is a result of is it urban growth or urban expansion? It's as a result of urban growth. Urban growth, we are looking at the increase in the numbers of people who are in the cities and the towns. So as a result of the increase in the numbers, automatically the housing facilities cannot grow at the same pace as the pace of the growth of the population. And as a result, we have typical problems of overcrowding and the development of shanty towns or informal settlements. Urban expansion, basically, we are saying it's a physical growth of the urban area, so it does not contribute, it's not a result of overcrowding. Right. The dash, is it range of good or threshold population? Refers to the number of people needed for a business to make a profit. That is a threshold population. Threshold population, we are looking at the minimum number of people required to support a service in order for it to sustain and make a profit. So it implies that there is a certain number of people who must be in a given area to support a business, of which if the number falls below the minimum required, that business will fail and automatically will close because it won't be having sufficient customers to support its provisions. Right, that is with threshold population. Moving on to the next question, number 127. Developed countries have got a high or low rate of urbanization. Developed countries have got a low rate of urbanization. It is only in poor countries or developing countries where the rate of urbanization is very high. People move to urban areas in poor countries in the pretext of finding jobs and also because of poverty in rural areas, and also mainly because of lack of services, basic services in the rural areas. But in developed countries, it's very minimal. The trends are high in poor countries or developing countries. That takes us to the end of question number 1.2. We move on to the next question, 1.3. Refer to the extract below on land reform. We are not going to go through the extract, but we are going to go through the questions. Define the term land reform. Right. When you are looking at land reform as a concept, we want to give a definition of land reform. What is the geographical understanding of the concept of land reform? Right, we can say it's a process of redressing, the injustices of displacement and forced removals. Forced removals that took place during apartheid. It's one way of defining land reform. So when we're talking of land reform, we're saying we are implementing measures to try and correct the injustices of the past. We are redressing the errors that happened in the past. What were the errors that happened in the past? We had issues of displacement of people. People were forcibly displaced from their areas because of apartheid practices. We had the creation of the homelands by the apartheid government, and they forcibly removed people from certain areas. We had the Group Areas Act, which was amended by the government to remove people from areas that were designed for the whites and put them in areas that were designed for their races. So, because of that, it led to some form of inequitable distribution of land. So that is what we want to address with land reform. We want to redress the land injustices that were brought about by the displacement of people and the forced removals that took place during apartheid. So the main purpose with land reform is to enable people to have access to land as a policy. It's a policy which seeks to achieve equity and equal access to land for all South Africans in simple terms. That is land reform. Right. Let's go on to the next question. According to the extract, why has land reform program failed? Right, we need to go to the extract and check for evidence which suggests why the land reform has failed. Why is the government failing to redress the injustice of the past? Right, we are seeing that it is saying South Africa's land reform program has suffered main failures. It's guiding us that way. What are the failures? Its beneficiaries have in many cases seen little or no improvements to their livelihoods. This is a failure. Beneficiaries of the land reform have in many cases seen little or no improvements to their livelihoods. Which means if land reform is meant to benefit people and the people are not seeing any improvement in their lives, it means the process has ultimately failed to achieve its purpose. So we are saying it has failed for that reason, that the land beneficiaries have not seen any improvements in their lives. Why we are giving them land, we are trying to improve their lives. We are trying to make the burden of landlessness worse, better. But now, given the situation that the beneficiaries are not seeing any improvement or they are seeing little improvements, then it suggests that this whole process is a failure. Right. Is that the only evidence that we have? We can also try to check and see if there is any other reason for the justification of the failure of land reform. It says land reform remains a contested or unresolved historical grievance. South Africa has a history of colonization, racial domination, and racially based land dispossession. The land restitution process is part of a broader land reform program, which includes redistribution and tenure reform. There is a general agreement that land reform has been a failure and needs to be sped up. Research shows that between 70 to 90% of the project, including land restitution, have failed. There is a general land reform has contributed little to helping beneficiaries earn a livelihood from land and creating self-sufficient farmers. So if we check there, we can also see that there is some failure there. Land reform has contributed little to helping beneficiaries earn a livelihood from land and creating self-sufficient farmers. If land reform has contributed little to helping beneficiaries earn a livelihood from the land and creating self-sufficient farmers, it means the land is not being productive enough. If people are meant to benefit from the land, they must become self-sufficient. They must not rely on constant support from the government. So, because the farmers are failing to self-sustain, that automatically qualifies the land reform to be a flop or to be a failure as a policy of the government. Moving on to the next question. Explain two reasons why land reform is necessary in South Africa. Why must the government institute land reform in South Africa? Why is it a necessity that the government puts in place land reform? Right? We can talk of to improve food production. We know well that if farmers are given land, they are going to utilize the land productively, and ultimately we are going to have food security in the country. So food production is going to increase, and ultimately we are going to achieve food security in the country. And also the basic purpose of land reform is to help people to have access to land. Help people have access to land. Land, remember, it's a basic factor of production that is required for people to succeed. So with land reform, we are helping people to have access to land, such that they also make a living out of that land. And again, we can also justify that to redress injustice. Injustices of the past. And mainly we are referring to apartheid. It's a necessity that the government engages in land reform to redress those injustices of the past. Black people were marginalized, they were not allowed access to land. And then we are supposed to correct that injustice of the past by giving the land to the people who deserve to be utilizing the land. And also, we can say land reform is necessary to alleviate poverty. We know well that there are high levels of poverty, and as a result, the government will try to find ways of reducing poverty. And one way of reducing poverty is by giving people land. If people have got access to land and are fully equipped to utilize the land, then automatically it means they are going to make a living out of that land and won't be vulnerable to extreme poverty conditions. That is the rationale, or that is the justification of why the government must engage in land reform. Right, we move on to the next question. In a paragraph of 8 lines, suggest methods that the government can put in place, um, that the method that the government can put in place to provide support to the people resettled on the land after land reform. Right, these people, the problem is if the government institutes land reform without support, then the whole process will become a fail. These people need support. They need to be supported in various ways so that the land reform process becomes a success. Because the basic idea is we want to see people prospering in life. We want to see the levels of poverty getting lower. We want to see people having access to land and utilizing the land productively. But if there's no post land reform support, then the whole process might fail and might fail to prove a point. So what must be done to try and provide support? Right. I'll try to illustrate the responses here. I will erase this part and utilize it for question number 134. Try to find out measures on what the government can do as a way of supporting the beneficiaries of land reform. Right. This is response for question number 134. It's 134. Right. What must be done? There must be measures put in place Government must put measures to ensure redistributed land is used productively. What is the implication here? Some people will pretend as if they are interested in utilizing the land for the sake of just getting the land, and then they will not utilize the land for productive purposes. Or some of them might even attempt to sell the land for some other purposes. So the government must ensure that they keep track of the redistributed land to ensure that the land is used productively. They must always monitor or put measures in place to keep a watchful eye on the land which has been redistributed to check if the land is being used productively. Right, then also we need establishment of education centers. Establish education centers, which is necessary for upskilling. In those communities where there is land redistribution, the government must try to establish education centers, like centers whereby farmers will get equipped with skills on how to utilize the land, whereby farmers are trained on different methods of farming and how to utilize the land effectively, such that the farmers have got relevant skills of how to use the land. Because in some instances, the farmers might be lacking some skills on how to utilize the land and they might lack the knowledge of how to utilize the land. At the end of the day, they become unproductive because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills. So if the government tries to establish educational centers such that the farmers are equipped with the right skills and the knowledge, it will be beneficial that the farmers will know how to utilize the land and how to ensure that the land is ultimately used productively. We can also add on training and development. The government can institute training and development on in modern farming. The world is changing. We cannot keep on resorting to traditional methods of farming. Now the farmers need to be equipped with skills of modern farming. They need to be exposed to the modern world of agriculture. So it is also the duty of the government. The government can try to assist by training farmers, training and development in modern farming to ensure that the farmers are equipped with the modern skills of farming and also they take initiative in incorporating the current methods of farming into their practices. Then we can also look at monitoring and evaluation. The government can do monitoring and evaluation. They monitor the situation. Is there any improvement? And if there is any improvement, then how can we enhance further improvement? Or if there's no improvement, what can we do? We'll find ways of addressing the situation and making sure that there is progress amongst the farmers who have been resettled. And also, we can look at other things like creating market areas for the farmers. Sometimes the problems of the farmer might be establishing a market for their product. They might be producing the products, but at the end of the day, they fail to market the product because they can't establish a market for their product. So that becomes a disincentive for further production by the farmer. You produce this particular season, you fail to sell, you end up incurring a loss. The next season, you won't produce as much because you know that there's no market for the products. But however, it is the duty of the government to try and create markets for those new farmers and also enhance trading amongst the farmers so that the business is viable. They will produce knowing well that there is a market for their product. So basically, those are some of the ideas that we can use but that can be implemented by the government to try and find ways of assisting newly settled farmers. Right, that takes us to the end of question number 1.3. We move on to question number 1.4. Question number 1.4 is based on Mtizane City, turns 8 and exemplifies the changing face of township retail. We're not going to go through the text, but we'll go through the questions. Number 1.41. 141 says, the movement of commercial functions out of the CBD is commercial. The correct response is commercial decentralization. When you are decentralizing, we are moving activities from the core. We know well that main activities are centralized in the CBD. Commercial activities, they are centralized in the CBD. But however, because of some centrifugal factors, now some of the commercial activities are now being decentralized. They are now being moved to the outlying business district. That is decentralization, the opposite of centralization. When we are centralizing, we are concentrating activities, we are concentrating commercial functions in one area. But decentralization, we are moving them away from a focal point. Then number 142, the shopping center, Mtizane, is an outlying business district or planned neighborhood center, shopping center. Right, that one you can find it in the text. It says, since retailers began entering the neighborhood space in the late 1990s and more so in the recent years, township residents have benefited enormously, said Tanzania City General GM Tin Trieri, who Senda has become a mainstay in one of South Africa's largest townships, east of London, in East London. So, if we see here, this is a township-based shopping center. So our correct response is this is a planned neighborhood center. The shopping center is a planned neighborhood center. State 3 factors that promoted the location of the shopping center. What are the factors that favor the location of the center? Right, if you see where it is located here, on the map, the shopping center is located here. And if we check, we have the national route N2. And also if we check, we have route 345. And also if we check around, we can identify the factors that favor the promotion of that particular shopping center. So the justification here, I will just list. We talk of the access roads that we have seen there. We have the N2, the national route 2, and also we have R346. This facilitates the access by motorists. Motorists plying those routes, they can actually access the shopping center because it's easily accessible. It's just linked by those routes. Then if you also check, there is open space. Or a large mall. If you check on the map, you can find that there is open space, which ultimately gives space for a large mall and also parking. Remember, in the CBD, one of the major push factors is limited parking space. Because of congestion, there is limited space for parking as customers go to do their business. But in the outlying business district or in these planned neighborhood centers, you tend to find that because there is space, there's also parking space for the customers as they do their business. And also there's space for expansion. If there's need to expand the businesses, there is open space. It's a favoring factor. And also we can check is also close to outlying residential areas. Outlying residential areas. So for that reason, they have a market base. There's a market because it's close to the outlying residential areas. And mainly in those outlying residential areas, that is where we find the most affluent customers. Customers who can afford, customers who are mainly the wealthy clients. So they tend to support those businesses because of their level of income. So basically, those are some of the ideas or the factors that favor the development of the location of that particular shopping center. Right. Then the next question is saying, how will the development of Mdantsane City Shopping Center have a positive social impact on the area? The question is saying positive social impact. We are saying, how is the society around the area going to benefit from the development of that shopping center? Right. So we can say because of that, there is job creation. People are going to benefit because there is job creation. Those businesses, they need people who are going to work for them. And automatically, they are going to employ people in the vicinity. And people are going to benefit. And also, infrastructure development. The area is going to have infrastructure being developed. Like, for example, roads are going to be developed or water facilities are going to be developed. And what is also going to happen is a saving to people. It's a form of saving to the people. People no longer need to travel. Because now there is a shopping center around, people no longer need to travel longer distances to access basic goods or services. They now get those services in the shopping center. So they are now saving their money. Instead of them traveling for distances to go and access some services, now the services are within their vicinity, within their reach, just in their area of reach and convenience. So it becomes a saving part on the side of the people in the area. And also we can say it gives an aesthetic appeal. Aesthetic appeal. Because of the mall and the shopping center being developed, the area becomes upgraded. So at the end, it gives a beauty look in the area because now there is a well-established shopping center which looks beautiful in the area. It upholds the aesthetic appeal of the area because it has been upgraded. So basically, those are some of the ideas that you can use to answer that question. Right, we move on to the next question, number 1.45. Explain the negative factors in the CBD that resulted in the relocation of businesses to Mdantsane and its surrounding area. We are looking at what we call the centrifugal factors. Negative factors in the CBD that drive business out to the Mdantsane and its surrounding areas. Right. What we need to look at there, we're looking at the negative implications of doing business in the CBD. Right. So for that matter, we want to identify some negative implications of doing business in the CBD, which promotes people to decentralize. There is crime. High levels of crime in the CBD, we tend to find that there is lots of people in the CBD, and because of that confusion of congestion, some of the people they take chances to commit criminal acts. For example, pickpocketing, vehicle theft, vehicle burglary, house burglary, shoplifting. All those things they happen to disturb business in the CBD. So crime is very high, and also we can talk of expensive rent or rent, expensive rentals. In the CBD, the land values are high, such that the rentals are also high for the business. So it becomes a negative implication for the business. Aspects like overcrowding. The CBD is overcrowded. There are lots of people there in the CBD. It's overcrowded. It's not conducive to do business in the CBD because now it's overcrowded. And also we talk of traffic congestion. Traveling in the CBD is not convenient because of traffic congestion. Mainly during the peak hours, it takes a lot of time for one to travel from one point to the other, and that inconveniences when you are doing business in the CBD. And also lack of parking space. Most of the businesses do not have parking space. As a result, they lose customers for that reason. And also we can check of lack of expansion space. Right, so because of lack of expansion space, there is also limited opportunities of expanding the business. Hence, in the outlying business district or in the shopping malls there will be possibility of space for expansion for the business, such that it attracts businesses to the outlying business district. Right, that gives us the justification of that question. Right, we move on number 1.5. Student teachers share ideas about improving informal settlements in South Africa. Right, number 151, it says informal settlements are located in, where are they? In urban areas or in rural areas? Definitely we find informal settlements in urban areas. The shanty towns are found in urban areas. Informal settlements result in counter-urbanization or urban sprawl. They result in urban sprawl. What we call urban sprawl, we are looking at a situation whereby we have uncontrolled growth of cities and towns. When growth of cities is uncontrolled growth. For the reason being, informal settlements are not planned and they are illegal. It means people just settle wherever they feel they can settle without the approval of the authorities. And as such, that will give a formless growth of the urban areas or a shapeless growth of the urban area, which is uncontrolled because the informal settlements are just an invasion of land around the urban areas. So that is urban sprawl. Counter-urbanization is wrong. Counter-urbanization, we're looking at the reversal of urbanization, where people are now moving from urban areas going back to the countryside or the rural areas. Right. Moving on to the next question. State one reason why people settle in informal settlements. Why do people choose to settle in informal settlements? Right. There are a number of reasons which justify why people settle in informal settlements. Why do people stay in shanty towns? Right. We can talk of things like unemployment. And unemployment driving to poverty. And with poverty, we can talk of lack of skills. We can talk of things like high cost of housing. And we can talk of influx of refugees. Right. So if we try to analyze some of this, unemployment, if a person is unemployed, it's most likely they don't have a source of income. And without a source of income, you cannot afford staying in the formal settlements because you are supposed to pay rent. And for that reason, you opt to stay in the informal settlements where the rentals are cheaper. And in some instances, you can establish your own housing unit and you stay there without paying rent. Then also poverty. For the same reason, if a person is poor, they don't have an income, they can't afford staying in formal settlements, and therefore the only option is to go and stay in the shanty towns. Lack of skills. Lack of skills will lead to unemployment again. If you don't have the right skills which are required by employers, it automatically means that you are not employable, and the end result is you don't have a source of income and you opt to reside in the shanty towns. And the high cost of housing. In the formal settlements, the rentals are in some instances very expensive and unaffordable. And for that reason, if the rentals are high, it means people will opt to go and stay where it's cheaper in the informal settlements. Then also can talk of an influx of refugees or foreign nationals into the country that has put pressure on the formal housing. And as a result, some people will opt to stay in the informal settlements. We can also add that there is pressure on housing in the formal settlements. Because of the pressure on housing in the formal settlements, it also leads to the increase in the rentals. The price of accommodation will get high because there's high demand. And as a result, that will lead to some people not affording to stay in the formal settlements. All right, that takes us to question number 153. Unfortunately, there is a repetition here. This must be 154, but we'll take it as it is. Right, the next 153, we are going to answer it. Give two social injustices that people living in informal settlements face. Right, when we're talking of injustices, we are saying people must be having equal access to resources and a way of life. But if some are deprived of those privileges, then it's an injustice. In an urban area, we must have equitable access to resources, and also we must have equitable access to way of life. So there is some form of injustice that happens in the urban informal settlements. What are the injustices? Or we can talk of spread of diseases. Because of the conditions in the informal settlements, some of the conditions are unsanitary, they are unhealthy, that facilitate the spread of diseases. And also because of the level of population in the informal settlements, contagious diseases are likely to spread fast because people are crowded. Then we can look at social issues. There are so many social issues in the informal settlements which are contributory factors to the injustices. For example, social issues like crime, social issues like drug dealing, social issues like prostitution. Those are some of the social issues in the informal settlement. They are most prevalent. We are not saying they are not there in the formal, but they are most prevalent in the informal settlements. Crime is very high in the informal settlements, which is an injustice. People are exposed to a number of criminal acts. Drug dealing, the Nyaupes, they are predominantly active in the informal settlements. Prostitution is very rife in the informal settlements. So those are issues to the society. People are exposed to an injustice because of those issues. Right, then we go on to look at other things like lack of hygiene. Lack of hygiene, it's an people must be exposed to a healthy environment. But in the informal settlements, the conditions are unhygienic. So it's an injustice. There's lack of hygiene. Then you can also talk of lack of basic services. Basic services, they do lack in the informal settlements. You can give example. For example, refuse removal. Refuse removal is a basic service that must be accessed by all people in urban areas, but however, it is lacking in most of the informal settlements. Things like overcrowding, it's an injustice. Overcrowding, people are overcrowded and they stay in overcrowded conditions. That is an injustice in the informal settlement. Right. So we can use those ideas to justify the response to question number 1.5.3. Moving on to the next question. The next question is saying, describe two ways in which Sheikh dwellers often show their growing discontent or unhappiness in South Africa. People staying in the informal settlements, they are not happy with their way of life and they have to show their discontent. How do they show that they are unhappy with the living conditions in the informal settlement? That is the question. How do they pose out their dissatisfaction with the conditions? Right. We can look at protest action. They can protest. They do protests as a way of showing their discontent towards service delivery, towards poor conditions. They can do protests. Protest action. Then we can also look at Um, it can get to the extent of blocking roads to traffic. In some instances, they will block some routes such that traffic cannot pass as a way of showing their discontent. Or in some instances, they can burn tires along roads. That is a way of showing their discontent, burning tires along the roads. Or they can also enhance in looting, engage in looting and damaging businesses or the shops. That is how people show their discontent. But not limited to this, there are some other ways that you can also talk about. But we are saying they can take protest action, they can protest. And usually those protests, in most instances, they will end up, they end up being violent. They don't engage mainly in peaceful protests. The protest action in most instances will end up being violent. Then blocking of roads and traffic, and also burning of tires as a way of showing their discontent, and also looting and damaging businesses and shops. We move on to the last part of the question number 1.55. Suggest measures government could implement to address the social injustices faced by people living in informal settlements. What can be done to try and improve the conditions of life of people living in informal settlements? Right. This is now the duty of the government. What can the government do to try and address the injustices in the informal settlements? We have seen that there are so many problems in the informal settlements. The people are exposed to a number of injustices, but now it is the duty of the government to find a solution to those injustices. What must the government do as a way of trying to solve the problem in the informal settlement? Right. We can talk of relocation of people, relocate people to decent houses. For example, we talk of The Reconstruction and Development Program by the government, the RDP program, is trying to provide less costly housing to the people. So they must relocate those people to decent houses, which has been controlled by the government. The government is making all efforts to try and construct cheaper basic housing to try and accommodate people. And also what can be done? Provide cheap building material. Or we can say the government must subsidize the building material to the people so that they can be able to do their own construction of decent houses and be able to stay formally. We can also talk of low-cost houses. The government must try to engage in low-cost housing, e.g. through the RDP. The government must try to establish housing units which are low-costing. And also the other problem, we can say provide basic services to the people. Because it's a problem, they lack basic services. So providing the basic services to the people, e.g. clean water, electricity, basic sanitation. It will improve the way of life of people because they live in unsanitary conditions, in unhygienic conditions. If the government tries to provide, then it can be better for the people. And also we can look at job creation. The government must try to create jobs to accommodate those people. And we can also talk of things like improving the education of the people and also the skills, upgrading the skills of the people, because some of the major causes is that the people do lack skills that are required by employers, and also some of them, they do lack education. So they need to access education so that they become employable, and as a result, they can also find a gainful way of finding income. Right, I think those responses are justified as correct responses to that question. What we need to do now, we need to move on to the next question, the question on economic geography of South Africa. Right, this question, question number 2, is based on that pie chart, which is showing the contributions of different sectors of the economy. Right, number 211, it says the total value of goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. The term here is produced in a country in 1 year. So we are saying the goods must be produced inside the country, inside the borders of the country. The correct response is gross domestic product, which is B, GDP. GDP means the total value of goods and services produced in an economy within a year. The next question is saying 212. Dash forms part of the tertiary sector of the economy. Tertiary sector, we know that it's a service sector. So which one is a service provision? Electricity, gas, and water. This is correct. Agriculture, forestry, this is primary. Construction is secondary. Manufacturing is secondary. So the correct one is electricity, gas, and water. Right. Moving on to the next question, number 213. Construction forms part of the dash sector. Construction is part of the secondary sector. Moving on to the next question. Which tertiary activity contributed the biggest percentage to the South African economy? Which tertiary activity? We must check on the activities there and try to establish the tertiary activity which contributed the highest towards the economy of South Africa. So we are only comparing tertiary services or services, right? This is primary agriculture and forestry. This is secondary construction. Mining is primary. Personal services, it's secondary. It's tertiary. It's 5.5. Transport storage is also tertiary. It's 9.1. Wholesale retail is also tertiary. It's 12.4. Government services. This can be a part of tertiary all. Yes, 13.6. Manufacturing is secondary. Finance, real estate, and business services is also tertiary 21.1. So if you compare this one gives us the highest figure. So finance, retail estate, and business services. Finance, real estate, and business services at D. That is the correct response. Number 215. Dash contributed the least to the primary sector. We just need to check. We need to check on mining and quarrying is primary. Agriculture and forestry is also primary. This is tertiary, is out. This is construction, is secondary, it's out. So we only need to check on these two, mining and quarrying and agriculture, forestry and fishing. We to check which one contributed the least between the two. Mining and quarrying, you can see there is mining and quarrying is at 5.2. Then the other one is agriculture, forestry and fisheries 2.2. So we are comparing 5.2 and 2.2. This is the least. So agriculture, forestry and fishing is the one that contributed the least. So our response is B, agriculture, forestry and fishing. Right, we move on to the next question. Number 216, Dash dominated the secondary sector. What dominates the secondary sector? Automatically, government services is out. Manufacturing, trade and catering. This is tertiary, and personal services is not secondary. So automatically, manufacturing is the correct response. 217. Dash contributed the least to the South African economy. What contributed the least to the South African economy? If we go here, we check the least figure amongst all this. Automatically is this one, 1.8. Electricity, gas, and water is only 1.8. This is 2.2, 3, 5.2, 5. They are all bigger than 1.8. So electricity, gas, and water is the least. Electricity, gas, and water at C. That's the correct response. Number 217. Right, move on to 218. What percentage did the tertiary sector contribute to the South African economy? We need to analyze and look at tertiary sector and see how much it contributed. We have to add up the percentages of the tertiary sector. If we add them correctly and identify them correctly, we are going to get a response of 1.18.4, which is B. Right, that takes us to the end of our first part of question number 2, which is question 2.1. We are moving on to 2.2. 2.2 is giving us examples of formal and informal sectors. Right, what you call the formal sector, those are registered businesses which pay tax to the tax authority, which is the South African Revenue Services. And the informal sector, we are looking at unregistered businesses, and those businesses, they do not contribute towards the tax revenue to the tax authority. Right, so we are supposed to answer our questions based on formal or informal. Right, many people are self-employed in this sector. People who are self-employed, they are in the informal sector. You do your own trading business, you are in the informal sector. The sector which makes the largest contribution to GDP of a country is formal, the registered businesses. The next one is saying the sector that generally shows a small profit margin. A small profit margin is realized in the informal. Businesses are on streets with makeshift shelters. It's informal. Greater job security and benefits prevail in this sector. That is the formal sector. Businesses are not registered with South African Revenue Services, like what we mentioned. It's informal. Then the last one, machinery and up-to-date technology is used in this sector. We can only get that in the formal sector. Right, that is number 2.2. We move on to number 2.3. Factors affecting sugarcane production by small-scale growers. We are not going to go through the extract. We are going to do the questions. Right. Identify a physical factor in the extract that had a negative impact on the sugarcane production in 2013 to 2017. We want a physical factor. Physical factor is a natural factor. So if we go to our extract, we want to try to identify natural factors which have impacted on the production of sugarcane. Right. It's declined from 50,000 in the 2000 to less than 13,000 in 2017. Results show that late harvesting, late fertilizer application, and chemical application were primary challenges facing sugarcane, likely to result in declined sugarcane yield. Other problems were a shortage in high wages, a shortage and high wages of labor, which was followed by high price of inputs, seed, fertilizer, insecticide, and pesticide, low price of cane, non-availability of fertilizer, insects. This is a natural. Pests. This is a natural. And diseases are natural. Lack of clean seed, those ones are economic. So if we check, we only want things which are natural or which are physical because our question is specifically asking on physical challenges. So the insect, the pest, and the diseases are the ones which are natural. So any one of those. By how many metric tons did the sugarcane production decrease from 2013-14 to 2016-17? If we check there, 2013-14, it was sugarcane production in metric tons was somewhere there. And going to 2016-17 is somewhere here, which is around 1,500. There is above 2,250. So as an estimation, we want the difference between the production here and the production at this particular point. We want to find the difference there. How much has it decreased by? So if you are to take this measurement here, it's 2,000 and 2,500. So we can assume that it's slightly 2,200 and against 1,500. If we take those figures, we are saying is 2,000, 2.2, 2,200 metric tons minus around 15,000. This is going to give us how many metric tons there? That is around 700 metric tons. But however, we are just using an estimation here. Your responses are as you're writing. It will also allow for a variation because here the measurement is not ultimately pointed out. But by estimation, the correct measurement there must be around 2,200 because 2,250 will be at half point. Then we get to 2,500. So the estimation is 2,200 for 2013-14. And then for the 2016-2017, it's clear it's 1,500. So the difference there is around 700 metric tons. Right, suggest two ways in which the government can assist small-scale sugarcane farmers to increase production. What can the government do to enhance productivity of small-scale sugarcane farmers? Right, the government can increase education, or skills of the farmers. For those farmers to be productive enough, they need to be educated on farming practices, and also they need skills. So if the government it tries to avail the skills and the education, then those farmers can be productive enough. Then they also need support through subsidies or grants. If the government can also chip in to support those farmers through subsidies and through grants, then the government might be in a position to assist those farmers. And also easy access to services. If those farmers have got easy access to services or facilities, they can enhance their productivity or their businesses. Then we can also talk of development of infrastructure. The government must develop infrastructure in the areas where the farmers operate so that they can easily access whatever they need. For example, the road networks, the railway, so that they are able to transport the raw materials into their farms and also the final product and do whatever they need to do along the provided infrastructure. And also, we can look at the government must engage in research to improve production. The government must research to improve our production. The government can research on various ways of producing sugarcane. They can find new ways of how to farm sugarcane through research, such that the farmers will get that knowledge and the skills, and then finally the farmers are going to implement those strategies in their farming businesses, and ultimately they are going to increase their production. Right, number 2.3.4, we need to also check on it and analyze what's happening with the question. In a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, explain the economic challenges that currently impact negatively on the sugarcane industry. We want economic challenges. Our question is specifically looking for economic challenges that are impacting on sugarcane farming. That is number 2.3.4. 2.3.4, we need to answer this question here using economic arguments, something that has to do with income and making money and also sustaining a life. Right. One of the major things is limited capital. The farmers have no access to capital. For that reason, the farmers cannot effectively enhance their businesses because they don't have sufficient capital to boost their businesses. So it's a challenge on the side of the farmers because of limitation of capital. Then we can also talk of some other limitations like input costs. Input costs compared to returns. There's less profitability. The inputs are expensive. Inputs like seed, inputs like pesticides, insect herbicides, labor costs, they are high. And when compared to the output produce, when the farmer is now selling, ultimately the profitability is declining or is diminishing, which is a demotivating factor to the farmer. It's a challenge which is economic in nature. Then we can also look at insufficient protection. Against cheap imports. If the government is not implementing strict measures on the control of imports of sugar into the market, then automatically it's doing an injustice to the sugarcane farmers. They need to be protected enough. Sometimes their prices cannot compete with cheaper imports. So we need to do away with those cheaper imports and ensure that our local market sustains. So there's insufficient protection by the government against cheaper imports, such that when they get into the local market, the local farmers will lose business because people won't be buying locally produced sugar, for the reason being that it will be more costly compared to the cheaper imported sugar products and sugar resources. Right. So we can also look at sugar tax. The sugar tax is increasing production costs. Whenever the government is imposing the sugar tax on the farmers, it is ultimately adding to the cost of production. And as a result, if the farmers are paying more to produce the sugarcane, then they are suffering at the end. Their costs will become higher than the benefits that they are going to reap after selling the products. Then you can also look at other things like water restrictions. Water restrictions, they increase the cost of production. If water is being restricted, ultimately the farmers are made to find other alternative ways of providing water for themselves. So as a result, that is going to have a negative implication because by them accessing other alternative means of supplying water for themselves, they are adding up on the cost of production. And at the end, their profitability is going to decline. Right, that takes us to the end of question number 2.3.4. We move on to question 2.4. Right, it says South Africa's electricity force continue to place manufacturing in the Gauteng PWV core industrial region at risk. We're not going to go through the text, we'll go to the question straight. What energy sources led to the Gauteng PWV core industrial region declining? We get that in the headings talking about electricity is direct. In the heading of our extract is talking about electricity. Right. State true economic problems that the manufacturing industry is facing according to the extract. This is according to the extract. We want to try and identify the economic problems that the manufacturing industry is facing. Right. If we check the first paragraph, lack of reliable electricity is not only leading to lost production, increased costs, South Africa shrinking manufacturing sector, but he has left, there's no economic factor there. The region was at a tipping point and at a risk of becoming rust belt with significant plant closures, rising unemployment, and um, crime, as well as low rates of local and foreign investment. So if we look at this, rising unemployment or job losses, this is an economic factor, though it's socio-economic, rising unemployment. Then if we also look at this, there's plant closure, it's another factor. So there is plant closures, rising unemployment, and also we have a problem of crime. It's another typical problem. So if we check on those three, they qualify to be part of the problems that are faced by the industries in the Gauteng PWV. How will the automotive industry over time stimulate the growth of other industries? We are saying the automotive industry is a stimulator of the growth of other industries. How is that possible? Right, we are saying here, because of automotive industries, we also have component suppliers. And related service providers. Are created. If you are having an automotive industry, automatically the automotive industry will also require some component suppliers. Components, you are looking at parts of the production, part of the main product being produced. If you are producing cars, we might need someone to supply us with the tires. We might need someone to supply us with maybe the other components We need someone to do production of the other components or supply the other components to make the whole production process finalized. So it creates businesses for other component suppliers. It is stimulating other industries and also related services. Like, for example, the automotive industry is related to insurance. We need to insure those cars. We also have to find out that service providers like insurers are also finding business. So it stimulates um, other industries. And also, we can talk of the multiplier effect. There's also a multiplier effect to other industries. With multiplier effect, we are saying there is multiplication that is going to happen. If people are working in the automotive industry, they are going to earn money. And that money, they are going to use it on other services or other goods. They're going to use the money to buy from other suppliers. They need basic provisions like food. They are going to buy. And as a result of increased demand, they are also going to grow the other businesses where they spend their money on. So that is a multiplier effect. You are working for an automotive industry, but at the end of the day, you are going to get paid. As you get paid, you are going to buy some other goods and services, which imply that you are also growing the other businesses where you are buying from because of the income that you got from your employment in the automotive industry. So that is the multiplier effect that is also going to happen in the other industries. Right, moving on to the next question. Next question is saying, how will energy provision become a major challenge for the automotive special economic zone, which is located in the PWV Gauteng core industrial region in the next 3 years? We are looking at energy provision. How is it going to um, how is it going to be a major challenge? This issue of electricity is going to be a major challenge. How is it going to be a major challenge? It is going to cause rising energy costs. We are having energy crisis and automatically the cost is going to rise. Rising cost of energy, which will ultimately reduce profitability of the business if you are having high cost of energy. Then also we can look at there are going to be power cuts. If there are power cuts, what's the implication? Or if there's load shedding, there's going to be reduced productivity because there will be lost hours of production. It is going to reduce productivity because of power cuts. And also with that, the other problem that might rise, we can look at aspects like um, unreliable, power network. We have a consistent problem of unreliability of power, such that it makes it difficult for planning to take place and ultimately to do as per plan, to work as per plan in terms of our production targets. It becomes very difficult. So because of some of those problems, we'll end up having a difficulty in the a challenge for the automotive industry in the next 3 years. And also because of power cuts, we can also have a factor promoting consistent feathering the power cuts, theft of power cables. That will disrupt theft of power cables will disrupt um, power provision. This is going to worsen the situation. Because of the power cuts which are happening, people will take chances to steal the power cables and further worsen the situation. If power cables are stolen during times of power cuts, during times of load shedding, then it implies that it's going to worsen the situation, even if there is now energy Now the cables have been stolen. We can no longer link to the grid. That gives us a further negative implication on the automotive industry. And it's going to persist in the next 3 years because of theft of power cables. Right. The last question says, explain why PVW Gauteng Industrial Region is a preferred destination for Ford Motor Company international investors. Why are the Ford investors targeting to establish their manufacturing plants in Gauteng PVW core industrial region and not other industrial regions across South Africa? Why are they targeting to invest in Gauteng PWV? What's the motive? Right, if we check there, in terms of labor, Gauteng is the hub of many skilled and unskilled. Where they need skilled labor, the workers are readily available. Where they need unskilled labor, the labor is also available. Gauteng, remember, is highly populated. And for that reason, it's very easy for those companies to get labor to do production. Then you can also look at well-developed infrastructure. The infrastructure is well developed and is well maintained. The road networks, the railway networks, even if we need to do business by linking with air, we can also link effectively. There's well developed infrastructure. Then you also look at raw materials. They are readily available from the mines. Resources that are needed to produce to work in the automotive industries, they are the resources are readily available, the raw materials to support the industries. And also the market, there's a big market because of the population size. Remember, Gauteng is the highly populated, and for that reason, they can easily sell their products because we have a wide variety of potential clients for the purchase of the product. Then also you can talk of flatland for development of new industries or for expansion. There's flatland around Gauteng, which enables the businesses to expand and also to develop new industries. Right, those are basic reasons as to why they can target Gauteng. We move on to the next question. Refer to the infographic on the Dube Trade Port Industrial Development Zone. Right, the Dube Trade Port, the facts are given there. Name the province in which the Dube Trade Port is located. Dube Trade Port is in KwaZulu-Natal, which is our KZN. It's in KwaZulu-Natal. That is where we find the Dube Trade Port Industrial Development Zone. Then it says, state one type of industry from the infographic that is found in the Trade Port Industrial Development Zone. The type of industries that are found, you can just trace here and try to find the types of industries. Right, if we check, it is talking about the land and accessibility, the runway in Africa. It talks about access to two ports, eThekwini and Durban. Right, if we check here, we find the industries that are found in that zone. The automotive, we're saying the manufacturers of motor vehicles, they are part of the industries found there. And also if you check the textiles, the manufacturer of cloth, they are also found there. And also electronics, we also find them there. And also we find agro-processing, is also present in that um, industrial zone. So basically from the text, we can identify those ones as part of the industries which are found in Dube at Tredport. It only needs one. You just pick one from the given set of the types of industries. Then number 253, name the international airport that is close to the Dube Tredport Industrial Development Zone. The airport is given here is King Shaka Airport. There's a direct link with King Shaka Airport. Right, moving on to the next question. Explain one economic advantage of the airport that we've identified here. What is the advantage of the airport? An economic advantage of the airport. This airport here, an advantage is because of the presence of the airport, it has created interconnected infrastructure to compete on international markets. On international markets. For the reason that there's an airport close by, it means industries in that trade port industrial development zone, they can easily compete with other industries from abroad. They can sell their products to the international market because of the accessibility to the airport. So it has brought an interconnectedness of infrastructure that is going to facilitate the exportation on the international market. And ultimately, those businesses, those industries, they can be able to compete on the international market because they can easily access the airport and um, sell their products on an international scale. And also, we can also say it attracts investors because of its accessibility, because of the because of the airport. Investors can easily access the industrial development zone and can show their interest in investment. And they can also enhance investment in industries in the industrial development zone. And also, it has led to the creation of, you can also argue that it's advantageous because creates new markets. Because of the airport, the businesses here can also be able to access other markets and link their products to the international market and also try to sell their products within the reach of the airport. They can be able to export their products and it has enabled them to create new markets for their products. Right. Because of that, I think we can safely say we have come to the end of our first section. We have come to the end of section A, which is our question on economic geography of South Africa. Right. The next move is for us to go to the next part, which is our part on geographical skills and techniques. This is our map for Philippolis, then the map information provided here and the coordinates. We must also go through the information. The map information, it will help you in answering some of the questions. You cannot ignore the map information as you are doing the map question because there are some questions that might be asked coming based on the map information which is provided. And then let's go to our questions. Right. The first question is saying, the highest human-made feature at trigonometrical station 249 is the highest human made feature at trigonometrical station 249. Right, our map is not very visible, but we'll just be trying to guide you on how best you can be answering those questions, those typical map questions. For the reason being that the map has been reduced, and also the map is slightly faint. We cannot effectively pick up on some of the things being asked for that matter. So what you need to note there is the question is asking about a human-made feature. So you check on the features and try to find out if they are all human-made. Spot height, road, reservoir, communication tower. Then you go on to check. We are referring to the trigonometrical station at 1 in block A2 and height in block B3 on the orthophoto map. So you check, and then it says the highest altitude on the cross section is. Here we are referring to this cross section that has been drawn here on a horizontal scale of 1 is to 10,000. So our highest point, you can see that the highest point is here, and you check your height on the vertical side of the scale here. So for that reason, you can see that your highest point is 1,455. That is the highest point on your sketch of that particular cross section that has been drawn there. Right, moving on with the questions. Right, the next question is based on the horizontal scale of 1 is to 10,000. We're looking at the horizontal scale of 1 is to 10,000, which has been used on the drawing of the cross section. Right, the horizontal scale of 1 is to 10,000 on the cross section is A. What kind of a scale is it? 1 is to 10,000. That is a ratio. Is given. This one here is a ratio. A fraction scale, it would be 1 over 10,000. That is a fraction. When the scale is given as a fraction, it's like 1 is to 10,000. A line will be given a line and with some graduations. This is a line scale. Then a word. It will be presented in words. 1 centimeter on the ground represents, 1 centimeter on the map represents 10,000 centimeters on ground. That is a word scale. So this one is a ratio. When figures are expressed one is to the other, that is a ratio scale. Then calculate the vertical exaggeration of the cross section. Show all calculations. Right, when we're talking of vertical exaggeration, we are looking at the deliberate stretching of the vertical scale of a cross section to emphasize the height of low-lying features. We want to show or to emphasize the height of some features on the map. For example, the valleys or for example, the hills. We want to show them so that they are visible enough. We deliberately stretch the vertical scale of the cross section such that they become visible. So if we check on that, when we're checking on our vertical exaggeration, the formula is vertical scale over the horizontal equivalent. Right. The vertical scale in this instance, if we are trying to check, our horizontal scale is 1 is to 10,000, while our vertical scale is 1 centimeter is to 10 meters. We need to change this scale to make it in the same units. So if our vertical scale is saying 1 centimeter is representing 10 meters, we need to convert this to change the meters to centimeters such that we have the same unit of measurement. How do we convert centimeters to meters? We multiply by the number of centimeters in a meter, which is 100. So we are multiplying our 10 by 100. So 10 times 100, it gives us 1000. So for that reason, our scale is 1:1000. We have converted our 10 meters here on the vertical scale. 10 meters, we multiply it by the number of centimeters in a meter, which is times 100 to give us 1000. So the ratio scale of the vertical is 1:1000, and the horizontal is 1:10,000. So coming to our formula, we are saying the formula form calculating our vertical exaggeration is portrayed as vertical scale over horizontal HE. So if we use the two scales, our vertical scale is 1:10, 1:2, for the vertical is 1:1000, 1000, divided by the horizontal scale is 1:10,000. So for this reason, we are saying if we had to use fraction scales, it means it's 1/1000 divided by 1/10,000. So for this reason, therefore, we want to introduce a multiplication sign. It becomes 1/1000 times, we invert this, 10,000 over 1. Sorry, it's 10,000 over 1. We have inverted our horizontal scale. When we introduce a multiplication sign, we invert this. So it's now 1/1000 times 10,000 over 1, which is the same as saying 1 times 10,000, it gives us 10,000. Divided by 1,000 times 1, it remains 1,000. So we are dividing, we are cancelling the zeros. We remain with 10. So our answer for vertical exaggeration is 10 times, which means our vertical scale has been stretched 10 times so that we can easily see some features on the cross section. We can emphasize the height of, for example, low-lying areas like valleys, or we can emphasize the height of some small high-lying areas like the hills. We have stretched the vertical scale 10 times more than the horizontal scale to emphasize the height of some features. Right, the next question is saying vertical exaggerations on cross sections make interpretation of the landscape more, interpretation becomes more easier. Because we have emphasized the height, now we can see the height of the features. Give reason for your answer. We are saying exaggeration is deliberate stretching. We have deliberately stretched, it's deliberately stretching, and therefore makes landscapes more visible. We can now easily see the landscapes. If it's a valley, you can easily see it because we have deliberately stretched the vertical scale. It becomes a deeper low-lying area. If it's a hill, it becomes a high-lying area which is pronounced, which is easily seen. So it makes landscapes more visible so that we can have easy interpretation. Refer to the area asked in block A2 and B2 on the topographic map. Give the shape of the built-up area. Let's try to see if the area is visible on the map. We are referring to the topographic map, and we want to look at the shape of built-up area in blocks A2, B2. A2, B2, right, block A2 and B2 on this area here. Which map are we referring to? Refer to on the topographic map A2, B2 built-up area. Right, try to enhance our map. Try to enlarge it and try to see the features which we want to. All right, area F, we are looking at this particular area here. We mapped the built up area, this one here. That's the built up area. So the question is saying, give the shape of the built up area. What shape is being portrayed by this built up area, which is labeled F? If you check, it continues going there. So the ultimate shape of this whole landscape, of this whole built up area, we can see it's slightly having 5 sides, because this constitute to be side number 1, side number 2, 3, and this is side number 4. And the shape there, if we're trying to check the shape of the landscape, unfortunately, because of the nature of the built up area, that portrays a rectangular shape in some instance. If we try to check properly on that particular, or it forms some form of a kite shape. If we are to look at it closely, because this end is becoming narrower and this shape, big part is becoming broader, such that it becomes more or less a kite shape if we are to look at it closely. Right. One reason for this general shape, basically we have to identify the reason for the shape. If we check that particular area, why is it having that shape? Right. Basically, if we check this whole built up area, it's more or less following a linear inclination. Like these buildings, if you can see, if you are to follow this road, the shape of this settlement is more pronouncedly, though there are some other buildings by the other side. It's not one line, but if we look at it closely, the overall shape of the landform of the built-up area, if you are to analyze it closely, it gives us more or less of a linear shape. It is more of a linear if we try to analyze that whole built-up area. And the reason that we can identify there is because of this route here. Um, the buildings, if you check, they are located mainly following, if you check this one here, it's getting narrow as we get here, and also here it's getting narrow as we get here. But the major reason here is the buildings, the build-up area is influenced by this road here, which is 717. So the major reason for having a linear settlement in that area is because of the area is influenced by the shape is influenced by the road, which is R717. Is the one that is influencing the shape of the area of this built-up area, because the buildings are ultimately following that route. Then it says state T2 situation factors that could have influenced the location of Philopolis. Situational factors that would have influenced Philopolis. Situational. We are looking at the relationship of this settlement in relation to the surrounding environment. What could have influenced the development of Philippolis in this particular area? Right, we try to look at the surrounding environment and try to see if there are any other factors related to the settlement which might have favored the situation of this particular settlement. Like if we check, um, there is presence of water bodies around the area shown by these dams. So For the sake of accessing water, this situation is ideal because of the presence of freshwater supplies in the form of these dams here. It could be a factor influencing the situation of this particular settlement. And also, we can also check as things like for example, we check the presence of transport routes can also be a favoring factor, which has favored the location of Philippolis in that area. If we talk of the transport routes, there can also be some factors that would have favored the situation of that particular um, Philippolis. It is linked by major routes. And also, if you look at here, we might argue that there are resources around, mineral resources, there are diggings here. So because of these diggings, it would have promoted the growth of maybe some industrial activities because of access to resources from the diggings here. It could be a factor favoring the situation of Philippolis. So basically what you need to identify, you look around the settlement and try to establish some factors that would have favored or that are in relation to the development of Philippolis as a settlement. Right, we go on to the next point. Give one point of evidence from the topographic map that indicates that Philippolis is a central place or a central town. Right, if we check Philippolis' location here, this is Philippolis. We are saying it's a central place. And by a central place, we are saying it's an urban area which is responsible for the supply of services and goods to the surrounding rural areas. Philippolis is the only built up area or the only urban settlement here. The whole surrounding area is a rural area. So for that reason, we are saying people in this whole surrounding countryside, if we check around Philippolis, there's no other built up area. For them to access services, they have to access services in Philippolis. So Philippolis qualifies to be a central place for the reason being that it's an isolated urban settlement which is in the heart of the surrounding countryside. So it's a central place for that reason that it supplies basic services and goods to the surrounding rural areas or these farmlands here. That is why we are saying it's a central place. Right, checking on the next question. Why do the roads linking Philippolis impact, how do they impact on the sphere of influence of the town? Right, with the sphere of influence, remember we said the sphere of influence is an area from which a settlement attains people supporting services there. Where do we get people supporting our services? Is the sphere of influence. So by the roads linking Philippolis, ultimately they are going to extend the sphere of influence. How are they going to extend the sphere of influence? Because of ease access. If a place is easily accessible, it means people are willing to, and are able to travel from longer distances to go and access services in that particular central place. Like if we check on our map, let's see if we check on our map, this whole thing that we are seeing here on the map here, right? We are saying if this road is linking into Philippolis, and also some other routes here are linking into Philippolis, it implies that people are now able to travel for longer distances to access services in Philippolis, to get goods in Philippolis. It means people are now able to travel for longer distances. If there were no transport links, it means the sphere of influence will just be the close surrounding area of Philippolis. But now, because we have these routes and also this major route here, it means people from as far as here, they can now be able to travel to Philippolis to get goods and services. So if we have transport routes, it's going to extend the sphere of influence. We are now going to have a wider sphere of influence, like this whole area becomes the catchment area for Philippolis because people can easily access Philippolis because of these routes linking into Philippolis. Right, that is how we justify the relationship of the roads to the sphere of influence of a given central place. Right, moving on to the next question. Right, our next question is saying, explain your answer. I think I've explained by that explanation. Because of the roads, there is easy access. People can easily access Philippolis. There is easy access into Philippolis. There is easy access into Philippolis. Hence, people can travel for longer distances. People can travel for longer distances to access goods and services there because there is easy access. State one advantage of the 717 passing through Philippolis for motorists. What is the advantage for motorists for 717 passing through Philippolis? Right. The advantage there for Philippolis for 1717 is that the motorists can find a place to rest. For example, they've traveled over a longer distance. They want a place to rest. They can easily rest because the road is passing through Philippolis. If they want to take a rest, then they can take a rest in Philippolis, or you can talk of refueling. Motorists can take a chance to refuel because the 717 is passing through um, Philippolis. And also, we can look at ease access to services. If the motorists want to access services, like for example, banking, then the route is passing through Philippolis. They can just do their banking. They can access the services that they want in Philippolis because it's passing through that sender. And also they can do shopping. There's an advantage for the motorists. They can do their shopping in Philippolis as they pass through. Right, then we'll go to the last question, which is a GIS question. Refer to the infographic below. Right, this is showing us a plane which is actually capturing images from above. Which GIS method did the aeroplane use to gather information? That is automatically remote sensing. The aeroplane is using remote sensing to capture information on that particular area. Images from the aeroplane were used to make topographic maps. Explain how South African topographic maps are standardized. How are they standardized? Right, the standardization of our maps, it happens in a way that the maps, when we're talking of standardization, we are looking at a way of making maps universal. We want to apply universality in the maps. So by doing so, we are ensuring that every map reader has got easy interpretation of the map information on the very maps that they are using when they are studying geography. So the effect of standardizing maps, we want to make maps universally applicable to all the map users. So what must we do there? Right, we apply what we call the cartographic standards to the maps, like the application of scale. The maps are drawn according to scale to make them standard. And also, if we look, the maps are also exposed to projection. We use standardized projection on the maps. There are several methods like the Mercator projection to represent the curved earth on a flat surface. Remember, it's the curved earth, but when we're drawing maps, we need to draw them on a flat surface. So we must apply some form of projection to correct the errors of transposing the information which was curved to put it on a flat landscape. So we also use projections such that we do not have misleading information or wrong information, because the information that has been captured there is from a curved surface. Our earth surface is not actually flat, but we need to take that information and put it on a flat piece of paper. We have to use projection. So projection is also another way of standardizing the maps. Then also we apply the symbols, and also we apply the key, the map symbols and the legend. We apply them like
Testing microphone 1 2. Testing microphone 1 2.
we can do a physical visit to the area and do a survey so that we can see the damage that has been caused by the um, soil erosion in that particular area. So that is one of the ways that we can use to actually collect primary data from that particular area. We can do a survey on the area. We can actually visit the area and do a physical survey on the area so that we can get the basic information or the basic data that we can collect. And also we can apply remote sensing techniques to access the data, for example, using drone systems. We can use a drone to actually view the area and get primary information on the area so that we can do an environmental impact assessment. Soil erosion in block D5 can affect farming, the farming area T. Mention two data layers in block D5 that GIS specialists can use to stop the spread of soil erosion. Mention two data layers in block D5 that GIS specialists can use to stop the spread of soil erosion. We go to the block D5. We want to identify data layers that can be used to stop erosion. Right, we can use data layers on drainage. We can study the rivers here and study how they impact on soil erosion. So a data layer on drainage is equally important. We can use that data layer and we can effectively implement measures on the data layer of drainage to control erosion. Then again, if we try to check besides drainage, we can also check on the data layer on cultivation. It can impact cultivational practices or farming practices. They can impact on soil erosion. Farmers might be practicing farming activities which are harmful to the environment, which can cause or exacerbate the level of soil erosion. We can also analyze the data layer on cultivated area. And also, if we slightly check in that particular block, I think those two data layers, they can effectively, or also the data layer on topography, the steepness of the area. Remember, soil erosion is also influenced by the topography of the area. So if we check those data layers, they can effectively help in assisting or finding solutions to limit the spread of soil erosion. Right, then it says identify a line feature that was used to limit the impact of soil erosion on farm area T. A line feature that was used to limit soil erosion, farming area T. Right, if we check, we have this line feature and this black line here. What are those lines for? We check on our map. Right, if we check here, we can see that this black line is representing a wall. So apparently they have put a wall to stop erosion here. If you can check this black line, it's a wall which has been put such that erosion cannot continue and affect this farming area. So a wall has been used in that instance, that black line, which is to the to the northwestern part of this eroded area. It's a wall, and that wall is meant to stop erosion. They've actually erected a wall which is going to stop the proceed of erosion into the farming area. Right, so with that being said and done, we can safely conclude that we have gone through our paper out of 150 marks. So for that reason, we can safely conclude that our discussion has come to an end. So it is my belief that it can also assist you as you prepare for your examinations. And to be precise, the question on economic geography, you have to specialize. And as you are specializing, the areas of specialization here for this paper, we have seen that for the industrial development zone, we are focusing on the Dube trade port. Remember, for paper 2 economic geography, you specialize. So the Dube trade port ultimately is the one that is going to be examined in the 2025 November exams, and also in 2026 May, June. So this is an area of specialization in economic geography. You specialize. So for the 2025 November examinations, the dual trade port is your industrial development zone. So you must focus on that of your area of specialty. We have covered that. And also we check on the another area of specialization, the Gauteng PWV. This one there, it stands for all the exam sessions. It's a compulsory PWV region, but in this instance, we are saying you must also cover it because it's part of your examinable core industrial region. Then we look at the agricultural product. Here, sugarcane is also a product of specialization in agriculture for your 2025 November examinations. And is also your product for 2026 May, June. So for those who are writing the 2025 November examinations, it means for your June examinations, you will be examined on sugarcane production as a primary product, as your agricultural product. And also for the prelims, you'll be examined for sugarcane as your primary product, and also for your final examinations in November. And the same is going to happen for those who are going to write in May, June at 2026. So for that reason, you must know your areas of specialization for your exam session. So for this one, for 2025, your primary, your farming product is sugarcane. When you are specializing, then the other areas are common areas where you don't need to specialize. You are studying everything like the sectors of the economy. There's nothing to specialize on there. Informal versus informal sector, there's nothing to specialize there. Right. So basically, it was just a way of informing you to know your areas of specialization as you prepare for your exam